Right. All right. Thank you very much for joining me and Ms. Preeti from GD Goenka Toddler House, Saharanpur of the Delhi. And I'm very happy to have all the parents to be a part of this wonderful session for today. So as Preeti had informed and introduced me to all of you, so I would be taking up a small session for each one of you. Okay. Before we get started with the session, I would like to know that, we have parents from different age groups. So we want to make it a little interactive. So we have the chat box. And in case if you have any queries or any kind of a questions that you would like to post in, I would want you to interact only through the chat. And we would not unmute ourselves until the entire event gets going. Just to keep up so that, nobody gets distracted and the flow of the event doesn't get interrupted. So my dear parents, my dear Preeti, very, very happy to be a part of this wonderful parent community. I see so many happy faces over here. Just to add on a little bit more, like whenever you're ready, I would want each one of you to turn on your videos. When we turn on our videos, it gives me such an excitement that I would look at each of you so that I would get a glimpse of how is the session going on. Thank you, Arushi, thank you, Harveen, Neha, Arav, Shivali, Saharanpur, Malia, Palkin, and I have a participant of Tanya and Abu, Kanupriya. Lovely, lovely to see all of you joining today, and your videos are on. Okay, so before we get started with today's session, I want each one of you to participate in a quick hands-on exercise. So we're going to participate the same way that I want every one of you to work with me on this way. Okay, so put your thumbs up. It's an interactive session, so I want all of you to put your thumbs up, put your thumbs down, cross your arms, open your fingers, clasp them, rotate it over, get it closer to your chest, and give yourself a tight hug. And you say, you love yourself. And to be very thankful to parents, I love you all for joining in for today. I would keep repeating over and again, I love you all for being such a sport. And I love you all for coming down to this wonderful session invited by Ms. Preeti of GD Goenka Toddler House. Before we get started, we have to understand a couple of things as we know that we have parents of 3 years. We have parents here at GD School who are contributing to the ages of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. Most of the time, what is known for all of us is like managing a 3-year-old, managing a 4-year-old, or a toddler is much easy. But 3-year-olds are very funny. At the same time, they're very thoughtful, they're creative, they are loving little creatures. Do we agree on that? Okay, so there are visual cues for our session. So if you agree, thumbs up. If you strongly agree, double thumbs up. Okay, so let's make it more interactive. Do you agree that children are thoughtful, children are loving, children are caring? They can learn and grasp all of those things so immediately. Wonderful. Okay, so that means a toddler stage is something that all of you have passed, and you have entered into a preschool stage, which is going to be even more fun and engaging because your toddler is no more a toddler right now, and he or she is a real kid. And at the same time, the child is getting into preschools and they are learning in much exciting ways. And many of the parents, sometimes we feel so relieved when we send our children to schools, right? Because the terrible twos have gone and we have put them into our preschools. And this is when the child would start learning about controlling their emotions. They start learning how to sort their big emotions. They're leaving you and going to the school and having an amazing 3 year of work session, I could say. And this phase, my dear parents, it's quite challenging, not only for you, but for your child. Not only for you and for your child, but also for my fellow teachers, right? And this is how the schools do take charge of managing and working with your child for 3 complete uninterrupted sessions. And this is how we would be overcoming every challenge that the child is going to be working on. So to work on all of that, we would definitely be needing certain other skills as Ms. Preeti was also sharing it with me, that she said, the school has provided so many opportunities. You have different kinds of exercises to actually work with. They're working on the holistic development, right? So from there, what do we see from here is like, we see GD school is already performing so many things. Have you ever asked ma'am, Preeti ma'am, about why was such activities was so important in a child's overall or the holistic development? When we come towards an overall development, every school is aiming at working on different developmental domains, be it physical skills, be it intellectual, be it emotional, be it cognitive, the social abilities. I took a look through of the list of activities that your school has been following. I think, Preeti ma'am, you have covered it all. So I was also going through your Instagram page, and we do have a lot of hands-on exercises. My dear parents, hands-on exercises are so important. And I also see that you have integrated your curriculum with Dr. Maria Montessori's principles. If you're very new to her principles, she is an Italian physician, first women doctor of Italy. Same time, she's an educator and innovator, and she has worked on her methodology called the Montessori schooling for our children. And what do children do in Montessori schools? They learn naturally. How do they learn naturally? They work on a lot of hands-on exercises. Every activity that the school plans needs to be worked naturally. The child will be engaged in such a setup. So there is a way that you would be setting up your classrooms. If it's an authenticated, if it's a pure Montessori schools, you will definitely find the structure and the arrangement of the schools like this. There are so many open-ended toys. So that means none of the shelves are closed. I think even in GD Goenka, we definitely use a lot of Montessori equipments for all of them. But my dear parents, let me tell you that there are a range of benefits that your child is gaining when we introduce to such exercises at the earlier possibilities in our schools. What are the advantages? Now take a look at the child ratios, what we follow over here. It's child-centric approach. Every child is given an equipment to learn. So we are also working on the individual needs of every child. There's so much of hands-on exercises that we also work in our schools. This is not only that we have to work in schools, but at the same time, you need to take it further at homes as well, wherein we can give certain designed materials for your children. Now, say, suppose if you're introducing colors, when you're going on a nature walk, you can ask the child to observe different colors of the leaves. If a child is picking up certain leaves, you can ask them to grade what are the colors of those leaves. Is it dark green? Is it light green? Is it the deeper green? And this is what was the concept that the child actually learned in schools. It was all about color. The school had a color deal, right? You need not work on, I need to have this material to work on exploration and discovery, but it is all about how we pick things, how we start nurturing our children with the conceptuals that we actually have. More important, parents and teachers, what we need to have is hands-on learning. It has to be activity-based learning. The more we work on activity-based learning, this is how children can actually learn and get everything from one another. If there is an advantage, if you are following a mixed age group, you can always combine children of younger ages with older ages, because that is how we work on collaborating. That is how we work on mentoring the children with the other peers. And every school, you need to work on respecting the child's differences. So there has to be no comparisons, because every child is unique. Every child's values, the unique talents, their interests, their learning styles are so different. When you let them to work on their strengths, that is when the teachers and parents are respecting that child for their individual differences. When you start working on these conceptions, we are trying to create an inclusive and a supportive learning environment. And we can work with freedom within limits. You can work on it. So what Dr. Montessori also said for all of us is, let the child learn in such a way that they have that natural desire to learn something. At the same time, when you work on hands-on exercises, you're not preparing your child only for school. You're preparing them for life. If you notice, if you see why the schools have conducted so many hands-on exercises, it was only for this. When we were working with art and craft, primarily we are focusing on strengthening your finger muscles. When we are encouraging the child to do coloring, you're working on the pencil grip. The child knows how to hold a pencil properly. When you're giving them clay models, the child is working with the clay, making certain objective models. We get to understand what is the hand muscle strength. Is my child opening the bottles with left hand or the right hand? Gives me an understanding about my child's dexterity. Is my child right-handed or is my child left-handed? Now, how do I make my child right? So we cannot give them right away to pencils and papers. That is the reason we start with basic, simple exercises in our classes, which is going to help me to strengthen my finger muscles. So, how can I divide my entire curriculum? It depends upon the methodology. So, at GD Goenka Toddler House, if you see, they're working on 9 holistic parameters. So, you have a blended curriculum wherein your curriculum not only talks only about Montessori, but what I see over here is like you have a complete variation of programs. The first set, if you're a parent of your play group, that is between 18 months to 24 months, I see your school has got a structured, stimulating environment. Wonderful play area, you have it. You can work on multiple skill sets over there. This is what is required for the first 2 years of age. That means I am working on the first area, that's my practical life skills, wherein the child is learning about his developmental milestones, his gross motor skills, his fine motor skills, how to walk, how to run, how to sit, how to be well behaved in a socio emotional environment. This is what is very required for me when I begin my toddler to enter into a school. So, this is how the schools would also bring in a lot of exercises. When I talk about practical life skills, it's not only, I can't say these are labs that you would be able to do. When I work on practical life skills, these are simple exercises that the schools would be able to deliver. The most important one is about my mannerism. When I enter into a school, how do I greet someone? Your children are taught about the daily greetings, how to say please, how to say thank you, how to interrupt, even the table manners, the eating etiquette, right? So, again, like washing their hands, keeping themselves hygienic. It could also be on their fine motor development. It could be like, folding their napkins, opening their water bottles, closing their lunch boxes, and setting up everything cleanly. So, all these things are somewhere helping me for developing my Montessori pre writing or my, I could say, as my fine motor development. So it's not only about these, we work on promoting independence to our children, we work on concentration and coordinations. So this is how a session or a class can be set all together. But when you're predominantly using materials, I see some of your lesson plans do have geometric solids, it does have trinomial cubes and binomial cubes. Why do you use such materials in school? What is the necessity to integrate all these exercises into our classes? Because this is going to help us to work on stimulating our senses. We have to hold, we have to touch an object, we have to feel that object, we have to see that object. When we are manipulating with it, we got to hear to the sounds of those objects. Can we smell it? Can we taste it? What is the temperature of it? What is the weight of it? Can I get that awareness of my spatial awareness? Isn't it? So, all of that is something which helps me to discriminate the conceptions of my size, my shape, my color, my texture, and the sounds as well. So, you can beautifully use such materials. At the same time, when it comes down to language, this is where the more focus needs to be given. You do not start by giving them to write on paper. The most important one is we begin by working on the spoken language. You start by encouraging the children to speak. You start encouraging the children to sing. You ask the children to identify the sounds of every letter. That means I'm contributing to my language and literacy skills through vocabulary building. The later is later, the writing and identifying, making words, getting onto syllabification, CVC words, reading, writing is all secondary. But can my child speak fluently when he or she is around 4 years? Can they do that? If not, is what you need to be focusing on your literacy skills. So that's the reason you need to begin at the earliest, right from the baby is born. The baby is being given to certain sensory stimulations. You sing lullabies, you sing, right, to your child, you sing, you hum, you interact with your child, you're never quiet. Is there any parent over here who's very quiet? My baby doesn't understand the language. We were never. So we started with the baby talks. We were like, gulu gulu. We used to speak all those words to our little ones. So can I do that when my toddler is around 2 years or 3 years? I stop baby talking. I know that my child would understand eventually, not today, but my area, the language development starts by promoting and encouraging the rightful spoken language to my child. So I would be working with smaller words. Like, say, for example, if I'm using objects, if I want to introduce objects to my child, I can say, oh, that's a lovely toy. What's the color of that? Oh, it's green. Have you ever seen a green bus on the road? No, we haven't. Oh, we have seen probably a red one. So that's how your spoken skills needs to be structured over here. Now, what are you contributing as a parent and teacher? You're working towards vocabulary building. Am I working on my phonemic awareness? Definitely yes, because I'm stressing on the colors. When I said green, I stressed on gr sound. When I said E, I stressed on my long vowel, isn't it? So that is where I work on my phonemic awareness. The child was able to listen to me so carefully. Every letter had a sound, and every sound, when put together into a word, it made a meaningful word for me, and I could remember it. I could connect with all of that, right? So this was towards my reading and writing. So my language, how do I support in schools, is I bring a lot of activities. So I cannot teach them the traditional way, like wherein the child is made to sit on tables and chairs. We don't give them to write letters. Gone are those days, because children have learnt everything from the parents itself. When a child enters into a school, out of my experience of 16 years into education, I know a toddler knows everything. When my son was in preschool, like, in 2005, when I had to take up the nursery admission, my son was able to read novels. But where everybody else was still struggling to identify the letters, how was that possible? It was only possible because of the early intervention. It was only possible because your child has got an absorbent mind. It was only possible because children of 0 to 6 years are like sponges. They can observe everything that you show to them, everything that you talk to them. They would be able to take every minutest details. That's the reason we always say, be careful when you're using words in front of your children, because they pick it so easy. And it is so difficult for us to make them unlearn the unwanted things. So, how do I make it so effective? This is what would happen right from the early years. Not only the schools take the responsibilities, it has to be an equal 50-50 percentage of parents and the teachers and the schools to work on development of the language exercises. It is also required that you teach your children much before they come to schools about the mannerism, how to behave in a social environment, not to show up tantrums. I know everybody's parenting styles are so different, and you're good at it. I don't know how you're going to be disciplining your child, but you got to do it. Everybody is like, some might discipline their child with danda, some might discipline their child with talking, some might, have timeouts, but you do it your way. But when it comes down to schools, we don't have that authorization. We cannot raise voice on the children. We cannot hurt the child. We cannot raise our hands on our children. We have to be very compassionate. So what happens there is, like, there are certain expectations that does come from the parent community also. If there is a possibilities, try to be more kind enough to your child. Teach them those particular skills. When you're kind, when you're compassionate, when you're empathetic, when you're sympathetic, when you teach your child to take turns, when you teach your child to take sitting tolerances, all of that is going to ease out your child's learning into schools. And that's going to be an amazing transformation. And when you're talking, always use kind words. Always have a well constructed sentence. This is going to help me for my language construction. It's also going to help me to improvise my listening skills. Slowly read a story every day. So, what do schools do? They do all of that. How do they do? They do it in an engaging, fun way where your child loves to do all of that. They learn it so quickly, but it is so structured, it is so methodological, right? So we can begin with letters, we can begin with sounds, then we begin with techniques to introduce, integration of two letters into blending, then we make three-letter words and so on. I think the meeting is going to get ended in less than a minute. From here, in case if we get disconnected, I would request all of you to join back. I think Ms. Preeti is already sharing a link.
Yes, I'll be sharing a link soon. So, dear parents, please join once again for this session. Thank you so
Yes, so we
much.
would wait for that, Preeti. Yes. So yes, we do have a lot of exercises like